Welcome to the new JFK Show number 120. Now just come out and say it. If you don't listen to the new JFK Show on a weekly basis, you're behind the times. I'm telling you, on just a week before this one, we had complete confirmation of Billy Lovelady being in the doorway. And then the following week, you're not going to believe it, but it's called the Bookhout Show. It looks to me like a FBI agent named Robert Bookhout is the one that James Bookhout is the one who shot Oswald. But the man that's really been spearheading this is Rowson K. So look, I want to thank Don Fox, Larry Rivera, Jim Fesser, and actually we're going to have to say you're on the team there. You're a semi-regular guy on the team. So go ahead, Ralph. Tell us about this new discovery.
I can now.
Huge.
Gary, can you put up that first image I sent you? I sent you the Bookhout image. I just mailed it to you in your email at Gary.
Well, I might have it already. Let's see if I have it already.
All right, Kate.
Let me make sure Larry's there. Larry, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
No, that's not it. Well, I'd like to see the whole image. I think the audience should see. No, that's not it either.
No, those are overlays. Those are overlays I sent you.
Yeah.
Look, I'll just go get it. I'll go get it right now.
Go get it. I just sent it to you.
Okay.
Files, it's in your email, Gary the Patriot.
Yeah.
Sent it. And this way they'll see the whole thing. I'll tell you why you're doing that. Let me give some background on this, okay?
Right.
We discovered an image that occurs in only one place, in a film compilation that was made in 1993, I believe. It was part of the whole 30-year anniversary. And it was a retrospective by the guy who produced the original so-called live footage of Oswald being killed. He was a guy whose name was Fred Reinstein. He was an NBC producer. And
all right. Which one, Ralph?
Upper left.
6 of them.
Yeah, the one that's the upper left.
Upper left?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Let's look at that one. This is the image that occurs in this compilation, this retrospective that they did in the early 1990s, where they were looking back, and they didn't make any commentary about this. I can tell you how it went in the film. There was a hallway, and they were leading the real Jack Ruby, not this guy, but they were leading the real Jack Ruby down this hallway, and his hands were cuffed in front of his body. And he was looking down. He was bent forward, and he was looking down like he was depressed, you might say. And then they turn into an office. And then the next thing you see is this frame here. And I want you to notice something about it. It consists of 4 people. And the 2 cops, and we see these 2 cops in other frames, by the way. I don't know their names, but they are familiar. These 2 cops here, I think you'll agree with me that they're relatively clear, okay? Their images are, you might say, relatively sharp. But the image of Bookhout, the image of the man behind him are both pretty blurry. The man in back is extremely blurry. I would describe him as being ghost-like. That's how blurry he is.
I think it's been tampered.
Yes, absolutely it's been tampered with. There's really no reason why either one of them should be less sharp than these 2 guys in front. So here's what I think they did. I think that they blurred Bookhout a little, and when I say blurred him, they particularly blurred his eyes. I want you to notice that you can see the eyes even through the glasses of the man on our right, and you can clearly see the eyes of this other detective on our left. But when you look at Bookhout, all you're really seeing for his eyes are these black slits, even though presumably his eyes were open and he was looking at the camera. I don't know of any reason why his eyes would have been less visible than the other 2. But they more or less blackened out his eyes. And in order to justify that, they made the other guy behind him even worse. They just made him really look like Casper the Ghost.
And Ralph, I just want to mention something real quick. He's a tall guy, and it looks like he's wearing glasses. That might be our Kobe lookalike.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. Yes, it very could be. That could very well be. But what happens in the film then, so it goes from the real Ruby, who's being turned into an office, and then it gets to this frame, And they keep the camera on this frame for, I'm going to say, about maybe 4 or 5 seconds while they're talking. But most of that time, it's very dark, and you really can't make out much of anything. It's just very dark. But for a split second, it captures light. And, you know, there's no justification for that. It's not as though the conditions changed at the time, but that's how it appears in the film. And so we just briefly get a look at this guy, and this is what we see. Now, the first thing that I think any honest observer will admit is that this guy is definitely not Jack Ruby. And I'm saying that on 2 bases. The first basis is just basically intuitively, just basically sort of in a very ethereal way. As you look at it, you know, you get used to recognizing a person you know, and your whole gut reaction on seeing him is, wait a second, that isn't Jack Ruby. But if I had to describe it in concrete terms, what I would say about him is that his head and face are much rounder than Jack Ruby's. Jack Ruby, you know, there's sort of a myth that he was a big fat guy. He wasn't that fat. He
was skinny. He was a skinny.
The fact is that he was arrested for something, and I think it had to do with not having a proper liquor license or something, back in 1954. And there's a mugshot of him from 1954, and he was much heavier then. He had a very round face. It was sort of similar to this guy. He still wasn't this guy, but he looked more like this guy back in 1954. But the fact was that by 1963, he had slimmed down a lot, and his face wasn't fat at all anymore. In fact, if anything, it was almost kind of gaunt. So
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, Ruby.
So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that this guy has a much narrower nose than Jack Ruby. In a moment, we're going to put up the image of Jack Ruby, and Jack Ruby had a much wider hunk of cartilage on the end of his nose, and his nostrils flared out much more. One of the things we know about this guy is that he had very narrow nostrils. I'll tell you, if he ever had to run a race, he'd have to breathe through his mouth. I don't know how he could get enough oxygen otherwise. He just happened to have a very narrow nose, and Jack Ruby didn't. So let's go next to the next image I sent you, which is the collage of Bookhout. Yeah, there you go. Let's go. Okay, here we go. Okay, so there's 2 things that I would notice. First of all, when you look at this guy on the right, what I immediately think of is Charlie Brown. And I should have brought the cartoon in, you know, from Schultz, you know, the guy who did that Peanuts cartoon for all those decades, made all that money. Well, you know, Charlie Brown always had a perfectly round head. That was one of his, you know, distinguishing characteristics. And this guy has an unusually round head, and it's much rounder than Jack Ruby's. Jack has more of a longer head and face, and there's actually a narrowness to his face from side to side, and you can see very easily that his forehead is taller, it's longer than what you're seeing on this man on the right. So that's the first thing. And the second thing that jumps out at you is the fact that he had a very narrow, slender nose. And I agree with Larry that I really think that they definitely blackened his eyes so we couldn't see his eyes, and that, of course, has a big effect on your appreciation of a person's looks. But also, I think that they kind of played with his nose, and they almost made it look like his nose was broken there. There seems to be a break right there in the bridge, and that was probably a deliberate distraction as well.
He looks kind of like a pirate.
Yeah, all right, go on to the next one now, because this is the best image that we have of the actual lovely. I mean, of the excuse me, actual Bookhout. No, yeah, go to the next one. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Okay. Now, before I address this, put it up. I want to remark on something that I think is absolutely
down.
That's the right one. Yeah. No, not that one. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Here, this guy Bookhout was present from the very beginning of Oswald being processed. He admitted in his own testimony that he was there at the Dallas PD waiting for them to bring Oswald into the building. And then he went with them to the homicide division. And he was there in attendance at the very first interrogation of Oswald. And he wrote one of the very first reports about what Oswald said. And of course, the other FBI agent who was there with him was a close friend of his whose name was James Hosty. So they both had the name James. Now, of course, James Hosty is a very familiar figure. Everybody knows what he looks like. He had this big kind of a pompadour hair, and he appeared on talk shows, and he wrote a book, and he attended the mock trial of Lee Harvey Oswald. And you can find pictures of him galore. Now, as far as I know, Hosty only attended that first interrogation of Oswald. Oswald did 13 interrogations, 13 separate interrogations. Hosty attended the first one. Bookhout attended at least 5 of the 13. And I'm pretty sure that that makes him the second most in attendance person after Fritz. Fritz attended every one. But I think after Fritz, the one who attended more than any other was this guy, James Bookhout. And he also admitted in his testimony that he basically followed Oswald around the whole 2 days that he was in custody. He went to, for example, he went to the lineups that they had, and we also, I didn't bring those images, but we have another image where he's in the hallway with Oswald, and where it appears that Oswald is even talking to him. However, you can't really make out his face. In fact, I think I did bring one of those images, and you'll see in a second. But what I want you to think about is this. How likely is it that a guy who was omnipresent throughout the 48 hours that Oswald was in custody would never be captured on film where we could just see his face plain as day? How likely was that? We have all these other detectives who we see over and over again. We get to, to recognizing them. We see Fritz over and over again. We see.
Well, I actually wanted to be seen in photographs and film, Ralph. And another thing I wanted to mention real quickly here is that those first reports that Bookhout filed, he said, and he wrote that. He said that he had been on the first floor many times in his reports. And another thing that I wanted to tell you that I just found, because I have a file on Bookhout that I've been collecting documents on him for 2 years now, that he was placed on yearly leave right after the assassination.
Aha! Now that's big news. He was placed on leave after the assassination. Holy cow, I wonder why. I have to wonder why. But let me make one comment about what you just said, which is that you're right. And I read it myself, that in his report, he said that Oswald said that he was on the first floor during the assassination. Okay, during the assassination. Now, first point is this, is that technically the doorway was on the first floor. It wasn't on the ground level. Those stairs are very steep once you get there. And, basically the first floor is not on the ground. It's, it's up almost the whole floor. So really the first floor of that building is more like the second floor. So if he said he was on the first floor, you could count the doorway as part of it. But even if that weren't the case, I want you to think about the fact that here we've got a building that is as big as a city block. It is one building that occupies practically a whole city block. What sense does it make to try to locate a person by saying he was on a floor that was as big as a city block? Nobody would limit their description to something as big as that and say I was on the first floor. Obviously, you would say where you were on the first floor. So, in other words, there's no chance that Oswald just said, oh, yeah, I was on the first floor. He would have said something more specific than that, and he did, but not wanting to say it, Bookhout just spread it into just saying, that he described his location as being a whole floor that was as big as a city block. But this guy was a liar from the first day. In his report, what he actually had the nerve to put this. He actually had the nerve to say that Oswald said that he ate his lunch after the assassination.
Yes.
That is.
Isn't that what every assassin does?
First of all, who wants to eat after a thing like that happens? But second of all, if you think about it from the standpoint of the time, you know, according to Butch Burroughs, the popcorn man at the theater, Oswald was buying popcorn at 1:07 p.m.
Right.
37 minutes after Kennedy got shot. And when you think of everything that, you know, he had to do in between to get there, the idea that he would have had time to eat lunch after the assassination is ridiculous. But we know that Oswald did not say that. What Oswald said about his lunch eating was that he ate lunch in the first floor lunchroom, the Domino Room. He ate it at a time that James Jarman and Harold Norman, two black guys, were milling around. They were in view. He used them as his, you might say, his alibi for when he ate lunch. Yeah, I ate lunch when, and Jarman and both of those guys admitted that they came into the Domino Room at that time to get their lunch, because that's where everybody kept their lunch. You came in the morning, you had your sandwich, you put it on the shelf that they had there, and I guess everybody trusted everybody not to take anybody else's lunch. And then when you broke for lunch, you went and you got your lunch. And that's what both of them did. And Oswald, you know, who brought a lunch from, the Payne house, did the same, and he was in there eating. He cited them. Now, let me tell you one other thing, that this is not widely known, but I got this directly from Dr. Gerald McKnight. He said that there is, and I wish I could cite it more specifically, but he said that there is an early Dallas police interview of James Jarman in which Jarman did admit seeing Oswald in the Domino Room at the beginning of the lunch break. And that's what we're talking about, because both Jarman and Norman said that it was at the beginning of the lunch break, meaning right around noon, that they went in there to get their lunch and to eat their lunch. And then after that, they came out and they ended up going outside. They were originally going to watch the motorcade from the street, just like most other people. And what happened was, more or less at the last minute or the last 5 minutes, they got it in their head that they were going to go up to the 5th floor instead. So they walked down the block, meaning down Houston Street, all the way to the back of the building. They came in through the back door. They went up the elevator, and then they got off at the 5th floor. And since the elevator's in the back of the building, they had to walk clear across the 5th floor to the front of the building to plant themselves right below the sniper's nest at that window, right in the corner there, right, one floor down from the sniper's nest. So that's where they wound up. There are two images of them. Well, you don't see Jarman, but you do see Norman.
The Dillard.
So they were definitely there. And so, like I say, I'm explaining all this just because I want you to know that there's no doubt that Oswald did not say that he ate lunch after the assassination. That is ridiculous. I mean, Jarman lied about, and I'll tell you something else he lied about, this Bookhout. I'm sorry, Bookhout is the liar. He lied and said that Oswald said that that when he was going home that he talked for 5 or 10 minutes. I think that's what he said, to Bill Shelley out in front as he was leading, because Shelley was out there. Well, Shelley was not out there at that time. It's very clear in the record from Shelley himself, from Lovelady, and even from Frazier, who
the railroad yard,
that they left. Lovelady and Shelley left. We even have an image of them walking away. It's it's in that couch film. You can see them there walking down part of the herd that descended on that railway area. So they definitely, there's no chance that Shelley was out front when Oswald left for home, which means there's no chance that Oswald talked to him. And there's no reason to think that Oswald said that he talked to Shelley at that time. So this guy Bookhout is just a terrible, terrible liar. So here he is. He's the most omnipresent person in the whole captivity of Oswald for the whole 48 hours next to Fritz himself. And honestly, I really mean that he probably had closer contact with Oswald. And remember, all the cameras were on Oswald, and yet we don't see him. Well, the only images that we have at all of this guy from the time of the assassination are in one short clip that exists online in which it lasts for about 20 seconds, in which they're just moving through a hallway. And they did a tremendous amount of doctoring and camouflaging of his face so we couldn't see it. Now, if you go to the next photo, you'll see the photo that I have in mind. That bottom. Now, it's the very bottom one on the right. No, right.
Right, on the right.
That's the one I want. Okay. All right. Now, you see the guy on the left who looks like he's got a bag over his face or something? Now, let me tell you something. You know, I mean, I'm trained in anatomy, and even if I wasn't, we're seeing enough of an angular view that we should definitely be seeing facial features there. It's not as though there's any chance that the camera would have caught such a blank capture of his face. I mean, in a shot like that, we should be seeing his eyes, and we should be seeing his jaw, and we should be seeing his ear for sure. We're not seeing anything. We're seeing absolutely nothing. Now, look closely at Oswald, and you can see he's moving his mouth. And as you're watching the video, you can faintly hear what Oswald's saying. I didn't never captured the whole thing, but I can tell you that it's something like, well, why is it that you don't believe in such and such? It was something like that you can hear Oswald saying, and you can see that it looks like he's looking at this guy in the fedora hat. That's Bookhout in the fedora hat. And I want you to notice that he really is a short guy, just like the garage shooter. He's wearing the hat here, and the hat is giving him some elevation. But look at the size of this cop in front of him. You can see how much taller he is. Oswald is 5'9", and even without a hat, you can see that Oswald's head is higher than his. So this guy has the same height relationship to Oswald that the garage shooter had to Oswald. And that's one of the reasons why we know that he is Bookhout. All right, let's go.
How would Ruby's height have compared with Lee's?
Well, you see, let me point something. I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because, you know, the fact is that the only reason they tried this to get away with it is because they did have certain likenesses between Bookhout and Ruby that they could, you might say, you know, get away with because they did work.
Really?
Height was one of them. I can tell you what Ruby's height was. Ruby's height was 5'8". So he was 1 inch shorter than Oswald. Oswald was 5'9". This guy here, if I had to guess, I'm going to guess and say I think Bookhout was somewhere around 5'7". I think he was just a little shorter even than Ruby. That's what I would say. But it was close.
Maybe even 5'6".
Maybe even 5'6". He might have even been a short. I'll tell you this: when I look at him in the garage, he looks 5'6" to me. He doesn't look an inch taller than 5'6". He might even be as short as 5'6". But I have a shot in here called the money shot. So let's go back to the ones that I sent. I'll show you which one.
No, I just wanted to make a quick comment on that last image. It looks like everybody has been altered there. You know, I mean, the guy with his back to us also looks like they've been worked on that one.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Go to this one.
The guy with his back turned there with the hat on doesn't.
Hey, which one?
Bottom left.
Yeah, the guy in the middle there, kind of. The bottom right picture. The one we were just looking at.
No,
he looks like our Kobe lookalike.
Okay, now here,
Ralph wanted to go to this one.
Yeah, no, this is what I call the money shot. And on the left, that is an actual picture of the garage shooter. Okay, that's him. That is exactly him. And on the right, we have Bookhout. And there's certain things I want to point out that are relatively small details, but they're still important. The first is on the right. Notice that Bookhout has kind of a puffy neck. He was a bit of a portly guy, and the flesh on his neck wasn't tight, and it would kind of bulge on his collar.
Ralph, I'm having trouble visualizing where Bookhout is in the right.
All right, well.
Is his collar right there?
That's his collar, that's his neck. That's his hat. This is a
There's a
black
hat.
fedora hat.
Oh, yeah, we're looking at.
Okay, I got it now.
Oh, you got it now. Okay.
I got it now.
So anyway, first of all, I want you to know that that kind of bulky, sort of semi-flabby neck, where it looks like it's kind of bulging a little bit over the collar, that is very consistent with images of the garage shooter. That's what I call the
Well,
guy.
you can see it right on the left.
Yeah, you can see it on the left. Now, the second thing is, and this is important, even though I didn't bring an image of Ruby, but I just want you to notice the degree to which his shirt rises above the collar of his jacket. It isn't much. It's pretty small. You see on the right that there's just a little margin of white that represents the visible part of his shirt. That's all there is on him there. And it's pretty equal on the garage shooter on the left. You're seeing, and even though it's a bit blurry, but if you look close, that between the darkness and between the grayness here of his jacket, there's a little kind of a little row of, it's a little bit of whiteness there. And it's pretty comparable. Now, it so happened that, and I didn't bring it, but we have images of Ruby from 2 days before.
Well, Gary has other images. Gary, don't you have other images?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Well, what do you have of Ruby? What
Ralph,
do you
I just wanted to mention that the other day you sent out a couple of really good images comparing the back of their necks, and the hairline back there, and they weren't even close.
Oh yeah, okay, that's a really good one. Is it
I
too
know.
late? Is it too late that I could send you some?
Now, here's one that I took actually last week, a screenshot.
Can you blow it up, or is that it?
That's as big as it can get, but you got a really good shot of his ear there and the back of his neck.
Ralph, you can send it to him right now. You can send him that one that I just mentioned.
Can I minimize this? How do I get out of this? Is there a way I can minimize this so I can get to my?
Yeah, hit escape. Hit escape.
Oh, hit escape. Okay.
So you're gonna send me a picture?
I'm gonna send you some pictures. Hold on. Here you
Now,
go.
this one, the collar seems to be more substantial. The shirt above the collar seems higher, more of it. Yeah.
Yeah, this one here.
Hey,
Yeah.
Gary, while we're waiting, why don't you run that last one, Ruby?
The GIF? Okay.
Let's check that one out.
I can go real slow.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. Not the same guy.
Yeah,
No,
look at the nose, the eyebrow, the chin, the contour of the face.
It's not the same guy.
The hairline. Look at the hairline. It's not even close, Jim. I mean.
Yeah, I agree. But they did mess with the one in the background. I mean, they really
the ears are way different. Look at the ears.
Yeah.
But just focus on the nose and see how it grows, as Ruby.
Yeah, it's Pinocchio.
Yeah. The lips, the cleft, Bookout had a little cleft there, and, I mean,
Let's look at some of your other photos, Gary.
I'm gonna be. I have done. I'll be with you guys.
Okay, Rob.
Okay. All right, we have
Click it.
there's our guy right there, isn't it?
That looks like him.
Yeah, that's Bookout right there, no doubt.
Look at that, Ralph.
What do you think of that picture? All right, Ralph?
Okay, I'm coming. I'm done. I sent you a couple of pictures. No, you guys. I got misled by that too. Yeah, he looked a lot like him. That isn't Bookout. Let me tell you something.
Okay, it's not Bookout.
That's not Bookout. That picture was taken at Parkland Hospital. And I realized afterwards that once they picked Bookout to be the shooter in the garage, and I don't know how much time we have, but I'd like to give you guys my reasons for really believing that Bookout only shot a blank. I do not think he actually killed Oswald. I think Oswald was killed later. I'd like to just quickly run through that. But I can tell you who this is. This is, he looked a lot like him, and he was kind of fat in the face just like him, but he's not him. His name was Detective Charles Doherty, something like that, Hority. So I was misled by that for a while too. Go to the images that I sent you.
Okay.
He's wearing a fedora, so.
I just sent you a new email, and you'll see. Oh, wait a second. Let me just finish going over the ones I already sent you before you close that. Okay. I want you to go to this one here. This one of these two here. Yeah. No, the on the left. Yeah, that's it. Let me say a couple things about this. Okay. Now on the left here, this is a vetted picture of Bookhout. Now remember, we have no images of him officially from the assassination, and we have no images of him from after the assassination, and I mean all the way to the end of his life.
And we don't have any of him with the FBI.
No, all we have is these youthful images.
So they've cleaned it up. They've cleaned his file.
I even found the guy's obituary. They didn't even put an image of, that's how scared they were of revealing what he looked like. They didn't even put it, usually in an obituary, they put a nice picture.
Sure.
They gave him none. This is a picture that was taken 26 years before the assassination. He was 23 years old at the time. He was going to SMU Law School, and that is definitely James Bookhout. However, I want you to know something. He did not have what I call drag queen eyebrows like that. You see the way his eyebrows have got this kind of sideways S shape to them? That is not at all natural. That looks like something a woman might do if she tweezed her eyebrows, or maybe if she shaved her eyebrows and painted on an artificial one. But this guy, he was a man. He didn't have eyebrows like that.
Now, Ralph, looking at the name below, it appears this is a flipped photograph.
Yeah, it's flipped.
Now listen, it is flipped. I know it's flipped, and we have it unflipped. But the reason why I use the flipped version, and as long as you
to get the comparison with the
it's for the same reason. It's for the exact same reason that Larry used a flipped image of Oswald in order to commit a doorman.
The perspective.
To get the angle right.
The angle of the head and all that.
That's right. And you know, and at the time, I said then that it's really perfectly all right to do that, because the truth is that a person's face is very symmetrical from left to right, with the exception of one thing, the nose. Sometimes people have very asymmetrical noses, but this guy didn't. He actually, from all appearances, he had a very symmetrical nose. So in his case, I don't think there was any reason at all to be concerned about flipping the image.
I'm just anticipating what our critics will say.
All right. And like I said, and what I did in the original article is I just put both. And I said, here's the original picture. You can compare it. But when you look at it flipped, you really see how the shape of the face, basically what we have here on the right is the same guy, except for the fact that his face got fatter in middle age, as a lot of people do. They put on some weight. So it created even
you're kidding.
So it created even more of a roundish effect. And then the other thing is, and people would be aware of this from their own experience if they just thought about it, is that basically your nose keeps growing throughout life. The cartilage keeps expanding, and if we all lived to 150, we'd all wind up with noses like W.C. Fields. That's just the way it is. It just keeps growing. So on the right side, he looks like he's got a little bit more bulk on his nose. He really has a very, very slender nose on the left, but on the right, it's still slender, but it may look a little bit more.
Can we go to some of the other photos, Ralph?
All right, let's go. All right, I want you to go. Let me finish. I want to show you the guy who's responsible for all this. Go back to this set. Yeah, give me this guy here before we move on. This is the guy that I basically hold responsible for the whole ruse. His name was Fred Reinstein. He was
Echo.
Okay, he was the NBC producer who produced the original so-called live footage of Oswald being shot, and he did the retrospective 30 years later that included that image of Bookhout, which was probably done by mistake.
So was he CIA, do you think, or?
Well, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, I'll put it that way. But
he's Jewish. I mean,
he went on to found a special effects film company, which basically, whose purpose was to create phony images for films. And I'm not saying that critically, but in other words, if you have to create something that isn't real and you have to use special effects to create it, his company was one of the very first to provide that service. And what I'm thinking is that he got his start here in the JFK assassination. And there's something else that he tells as part
He earned his spurs.
Okay, as part of the story of all this is that he got to meet Ruby. He said that during the 2 days preceding this shooting, meaning the 22nd, the 23rd, that they had their film van parked in Dealey Plaza, and that he said more than once Jack Ruby stuck his head in the window and introduced himself, and they chatted it up a little bit. So he got to know Ruby.
The guy he had framed for shooting the alleged assassin of the United States, they were on good terms.
All right, now go to the latest
And
thing.
they were both, yeah, and they were both Jewish. So
Yeah, well, that is a fact as well. Okay, go to
The other ones?
yeah, go to the, I just sent them to you. You got 2 more images here.
Bucks. There you go.
This one?
Let's go to the other one first.
Oh, okay, I can.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's go. I changed my mind. Go back to that. Okay.
That's the one.
Okay, now this is the collage that basically started the whole thing. In other words, before I knew anything about Bookhout, this is what convinced me that, I don't know who he is, but that garage shooter is definitely not Jack Ruby. This is a bona fide image of Jack Ruby. It was taken on the 22nd. It was taken right there in the homicide division. And why they let Jack Ruby in there to mill around with the reporters and the cameramen who were tailing Oswald, I don't know. He was a saloon owner.
Well, they let him in there to set him up, Ralph. But look, half of the Dallas police went to the Carousel Club.
Yeah, okay.
That was a regular hangout for Dallas cops, and anyone who was interested in any action in Dallas went to the Carousel.
Now,
Let's not forget to give Stephen Westerberg credit for this. Because this is very important that Stephen came up with this collage.
yes, this is Stephen F. Westerberg made this. But I want you to notice something. Now, first of all, you notice on the left that Ruby's neck looks kind of gray. In other words, it looks kind of dirty. It looks dark compared to the neck of the shooter. What you're seeing there, it's not a tan, and it's not his skin color either. What you're really seeing there is just scruffy hair growth. In other words, he was probably several weeks into a haircut, and the hair on the back of his neck was starting to grow in.
When was this photo of Ruby taken?
On the 22nd, 2 days.
Friday night. Yep, Friday night. Yep.
Okay. So basically, his hair, he was getting a little bit untidy back there, where he could have used a little bit of razoring to clean up his neck. Now, in contrast, the garage shooter was just as clean as a bell. He was just clean as a whistle. I mean, he was just hairless below his.
And he seems to have had a very great straight cut.
Okay. Now
That's
there's
right.
something else. Okay, now there's something else I want to point out here. If you look closely at this shooter here on the right, it looks like for 1963, his hair looks very long. It's curling up at the bottom of his hairline.
Jack.
And that was extremely uncommon. It was simply, this was before the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles didn't really hit until the next year. And even when they hit, they affected young people. They didn't.
It would have affected Jack Ruby.
Right, okay. So in other words, what I'm telling you is I do not believe for 1 second that his hair was really that long. What I think they did was deliberately give him longer hair so that he didn't have the clean, kind of a close cut that you would expect an FBI agent.
You think this photo of Ruby was tampered with, the hairline?
Well, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this guy. I'm talking about
Garage shooter.
the
Yeah.
length
Garage shooter.
of his hair.
Yeah.
At the back of his head. I mean, it's just too long. It wasn't that long. I can guarantee you Bookhout's hair wasn't that long. All
Okay.
the FBI agents
They
and,
messed with that to make it look more like Ruby.
well, to make it look more like Ruby, but also to just make it look like anybody but a law enforcement man.
Yeah, less
Law
like Bookhout.
enforcement
Yeah.
here would not have hair that long and didn't have hair that long. Now, there's something else I realized just in the last couple of days, and I didn't bring it this time. If we do another show, I'll bring it. But there's a very famous frame during the lead up to the shooting, in which you can see Oswald glancing at the shooter. No doubt about it. He's turning his head left, and he's looking at the shooter. Graves doesn't do it. Lavelle doesn't.
Well,
Those guys were both warned that somebody could take a shot at Oswald. Supposedly, they received 100.
Ralph, they were setting him up. They were holding him in a position where he couldn't turn away.
Just pointing out how ridiculous it is.
Right. They were holding him there to be a target.
That's it. Exactly. All right. So anyway, the point is, though, the only one who actually moved his head was Oswald. And he moved it, and he looked at the shooter. And let me tell you something. He looked at him in such a way that we can be certain that he recognized him. He was
From having spent all that time with him the days before.
Right, exactly.
And that may have been something they deliberately calculated so people could say, well, he looks at the shooter and identifies him. Jack Ruby, of course.
Exactly. And that's exactly what people did in their minds. Oh, that guy must be Ruby because it looks like Oswald knew him.
He seemed to recognize him,
Oswald knew Bookhout. In fact, listen, it's possible that Oswald knew Bookhout even from before the assassination because we know that Oswald had a connection to Hosty before the assassination. Who knows? He might, and Bookhout was stationed in Dallas. They may have had a connection. I mean, the way we see them talking in the hall, they look mighty familiar with each other, like they really knew each other. So in other words, that's who Oswald was looking at. He wasn't looking at Ruby. He was looking at Bookhout.
No, Ralph and Jim, would it have been possible that Lee was told that they were going to stage?
Yes, and I'm going to get to that. But let me before
I don't know. I think his reaction to the shot is too physical, too real.
I can tell you.
I mean, Ralph saying maybe it was with the blank. He was shot blank.
Another thing that Staffen pointed out is that there's a difference in the way their hairlines go. Even though this is a blurry image, that if you look closely, you can see where his ear is. And there's more distance between his ear, the shooter's ear, and where the hair starts, than it is on Ruby. In other words, there's less sort of a margin of just blank skin before the hair.
It looks like they messed with his ear in this photograph.
There's no doubt that it's not the same guy.
Okay, Barbara, final thing. Look at the height of the shirt collar on Ruby. It rode up much higher. He had a much bigger collar.
The shirt is higher than the jacket collar by a half an inch.
Much higher on a jacket,
It's like a half an inch. The other guy about a quarter.
A different fit, just an altogether different fit.
Good,
Now look how fat this guy's neck is. Ruby's neck isn't fat. He had a more thinner neck.
Right.
Different guy. Okay, go to the next image. This image is going to tell a story. Let us go to this. This is the last image I got, and I can easily use up the rest of the time if you'll give it to me. Okay. All right, this is the image. Okay, first of all, the first thing I want you to notice is how short this guy is. I mean, just look at him there. He's a tiny guy. I think Jim is right. He's probably no more than 5'6". Ruby was 5'8", so that's a 2-inch spread right there. Now, as we look at this image, Oswald is already on the ground, okay? And let me tell you what Oswald did. It's very important to know what Oswald did. Oswald supposedly got shot. We heard the blast. The first thing he did was cringe forward. He doubled over. He actually basically just doubled over like he had a bellyache.
Well, the expression on his face, Ralph, he's given an expression of immense pain.
Yes, immense pain. I agree. All right, the next thing he did was he leapt back. He actually got out of there. He leapt back. And he actually went up on his toes. And I mean, he went up on his tippy toes. We can see it in the films. I have a lot of frames of him. I have it circled. You can see Oswald almost like a ballerina. He's up on his toes. And then finally, what he does in the film is he just sinks straight down like a stone dropped off a building. He just absolutely goes down like an elevator. But he does it so fast that you know that they had to cut frames out, because the fact is that if you have a person who falls, who's, let's say, loses consciousness and he faints, well, there's an acceleration involved. You don't just fall at
Well, Ralph, now this was going on in real time, right? I mean, how would they have been able to excise films when we were seeing this presumably in real time?
Well, first of all, let's remember something, Jim, that just because they're showing us today what they claim was shown.
Well, I understand today, but yeah.
It's edited since then. So I don't know what it looked like in 1963 when they actually showed it on television. But I'm also open to the possibility that they're lying when they said it was real time, that it might have been at least
pre-recorded. Yeah.
Pre-recorded.
I mean, the whole thing, like Ralph, what you were pointing out earlier, was how all these guys move. Like after Oswald gets shot, there's this rugby scrum.
Let me go into that a little bit, but let me say one other thing first, that if you watch the NBC footage, what you hear, and I forget the guy's name of the announcer who says, but I remember what he says. He says, and he says it very quickly like he's in an immense hurry. He says, now to Dallas, Texas, and Tom Pettit. And then the camera breaks, and at that very instant, you see the trio of Lavelle, Oswald, and Graves coming out. Well, if it was live, truly live, how can it break and that quickly? Because if it was live, you don't know when they're coming out. You got to get there before they come out because you don't really know they could come out at any time. So the fact that he says it and the camera goes, and what do they just get lucky that?
Well, Ralph, the fact that he doesn't go to the other reporter is telling. You would have had. He says now we go to Tom Pettit. Tom Pettit would have been there.
All right, but anyway, getting back to this frame here, this is what is really weird. Oswald is already on the ground. You can see he's out of sight. If you look closely, that may be supposed to be his body at the very bottom, but Oswald is already down. So we've heard the shot. And then Oswald made 3 groans, 3 distinct groaning utterances. And now this scuffle is starting to begin. I want you to notice that Captain Will Fritz, not only has he not turned around yet, but he hasn't even reacted. I mean, I have a gun that is very similar to the Colt Cobra that was supposedly used. Mine is a snub-nose Smith & Wesson 38, and this was a Colt Cobra Special 38. Different manufacturers, but very similar guns. And I can tell you that these snub-nose revolvers are loud. You know, I go to the range to shoot my pistol, and I wear earmuffs, but even when I shoot that pistol with the earmuffs, I mean, it is really loud. And in a situation like this, where it was being shot in close quarters, where the sound was going to be kind of bouncing off the walls because you've got, walls on 3 sides, that would have been tremendously loud, and not just loud, but really startling. And when a person reacts in a startle, it's really a reflex. You don't have time to think. You just do it.
Right.
So how after a blast went off and a scream, 3 utterances, and a bunch of men are scuffling, how is it possible that Fritz hasn't even reacted, even with a startle reaction, never mind turning around?
Well,
so
obviously it implies foreknowledge, but it's atypical, not a human response. He should have said,
it is not biological, okay? It is not neurological, okay?
But this is a major historical event, Mr. Policeman. You might want to turn around and see what's going on here. Huh?
Right.
Okay, now the next thing is this, you guys. The next thing is that they're kind of reaching for him here. But it's important to remember that he's not resisting them. He's not trying to get away from them. He's not trying to shoot anybody else. What he does immediately from this point is he basically dives into this swarm of men. He dives towards them. He just literally leaps.
He wants to conceal his face.
He wants to
diving into them to conceal his head, his face, his identity.
He wants to take cover. And what follows that is that all of these guys, and let me tell you something else. This guy here that you see is an enormous guy. He is he's a monster. Lavelle is a big man. I don't know how tall Lavelle is, but I'm sure he's over.
Lavelle's about 6'3".
Yeah, this guy here, he's like a basketball player. I mean, he must have been about 6'6", probably about 250 pounds. I'm telling you, they deliberately placed a big guy there, and the guy next to him is pretty big too, just because these guys, they're meant to be a curtain. That's what their job is. They're meant is to be to cover this guy up because they have a job to do now. And that job is to get this guy out of this area without exposing him.
Exit stage left. Yep.
Exactly, stage left. Now, what's going to happen next? All right, go to the next frame, okay? Go to the next frame.
There's only 2 of them right there.
Oh, do we have time that I can send you another one?
Sure.
Yeah, shoot it. Go ahead. Yeah, I can go get the video of the whole thing. We can look at. Didn't y'all send that video to me?
I can send it to you. Oh, hold on a second.
Here's the one down here. Peter McKeever right there. Is it there? Including bang on the head? Is that it? Yeah. Is it? No, down. Yeah, there. Yeah.
Okay.
Open it.
Oh yeah, on YouTube, yeah. But you got to go to the time there, the time mark that he says in there.
Keep going. Oh, there. Okay.
Right there.
Look at this, Ralph. Look what we got here.
Okay, all right.
Watch him throw the bag over his head.
Look how they're lined up. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
It's all
like,
choreographed.
It's like the chorus.
It's when they're playing soccer, so you don't get hit in the groin. You know when they're playing.
they're all covering up. Yeah.
Oh, they're ready for that rugby scrum.
Now listen, the other point I wanted to make to you guys is this: I mean, there's no doubt that these guys were in. Oh no, wait a second! You see this guy here? They're going to blow him up. At one point, they actually kind of swallow that guy up just so that he takes up a bigger place in front of the camera. I always got a kick out of that. But the other thing I wanted to say is this: there's no doubt that they were in on it. But let me ask you this: if you knew that somebody was going to be coming from the left side and you were on the other side of Oswald, would you want to be handcuffed to him while this bullet was soaring through Oswald's body? I mean, here you've got this skinny guy, skin and bone. He's got not an ounce of fat on his body. He's 130 pounds and 5'9". I mean, I'm a thin guy and I weigh more than he does, and I'm 3 inches shorter. And so that bullet, would you want to be Lavelle knowing that bullet was coursing? The only thing between that bullet and you was going to be Oswald. I say no way would Lavelle have been willing to be handcuffed.
Here it goes.
Right there, boom. So Oswald goes down like a stone. You see the way the guy he threw the
black bag
over his head because what happened was the hat came off.
Yep. How would they happen to have a bag there anyway?
Yeah.
Well, they had something that he put over.
Watch him try to catch that real quick. You have to look. I mean, just the idea that they had a bag handy that fast to cover his head. Something's really wrong here.
I want to mention those guys against the wall. They look all like they're all FBI,
Look
clean
how long
cut.
it takes Fritz to turn around.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we talked about them.
Now watch. The guy's about to come up. See this guy right here where my cursor is about to put a bag on his head.
It's kind of covered.
He just did it.
Listen, let me call you back. I'm finishing tape.
Okay, now listen, you guys. Here's something else to think about. They
Here
get
it goes again.
Okay, good. Yeah, good. Bye.
Oh, Oswald.
All right, now, Dr. Fetzer, I know you didn't catch it, but we're going to play it one more time.
Just happen to have a bag handy, huh?
Yeah, just happen to have one in my pocket.
Don't you always carry one with you?
I never go home without it. Leave home without it.
Well,
Okay,
in
now
the basement of a police station, yeah.
Okay,
Boom.
here's Ruby.
Now wait a second. Stop it
There
right
he
there.
is.
Go right there. Anyway, when you did that shot before, can you go back to that other frame?
Yeah.
Go back to that other frame where it looks like he's making the shot. Okay, where it seems to be happening.
Where's Fritz? Where's Fritz?
There he is.
The imperturbable Fritz.
Okay,
Right.
now my point is this: would you want to be Lavelle knowing that he's shooting this at close, at basically
Point blank.
Hey, it goes with the territory, Ralph. Would you want to be Roy Kellerman or William Greer when they're going to fire a shot through the windshield? It goes with the territory. It's part of your job, your assignment.
Okay, now wait a second. Let me say one other thing here. Blow this up. Can you make this all together big?
Yeah, it's full screen right now.
All right. Well, okay, here's what I want to say. Basically, he's shooting right there, or he's within a tenth of a second of shooting right there. Nobody can doubt that. That Lion Lavelle, on the very day of the assassination, he actually did an interview. He claimed to have seen the shooter coming, claimed to have recognized him as Ruby, claimed to have seen the gun, known what was about to happen, and then claimed to have basically yanked Oswald so as to pull him behind him and with his left hand.
Right.
Also to shove on the shooter's right shoulder, the shooter's left shoulder with his right hand. Lavelle didn't do any of that. You can see right here that Lavelle disengaged from the whole thing.
Everyone had a role to play, and his was to lie about the identity
Oh,
of the
my God,
shooter,
just a bold
as
thing.
well as set up Oswald for the hit.
Okay, but
Keep going. I want to see the bag.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to see if I can catch it for you. All right. Now, if you can see my cursor, it's going to be this guy here. Look, he's got his bag. He puts it over his head right there.
Oh, yep.
And that's it. Then they whisk him into the room,
We don't
and they
see
close the door.
Wait, keep going, because they're gonna. I'm gonna just see
Look
this.
how they thought this out. They knew they had to conceal their faces, so they put a bag over it.
They've got all these curtains in here. They basically put these people here just so we don't get to see. We don't see Oswald being moved into the building. We don't see Ruby being moved into the building. It's all just commotion, commotion, commotion. Okay, go to the pictures I sent, because I sent you one where you can see the guy putting the bag anyway. Go to the email, Gary.
Okay.
You see, like I said, they really just screw with that thing to make sure that they have these curtains up there. So
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, look how choreographed the whole limo stop thing was. I mean, this whole thing was gently choreographed from start to finish.
I was just telling Jim a little while ago, now we're starting to understand the magnitude of this whole operation.
Well, it was a coup d'etat.
there's something,
Well,
Dan-
it's stunning that they had an FBI agent shoot Lee Oswald. That is stunning.
I'll tell you something. Our friend Dennis also sent me saying that
Don.
he's got a lot of experience with firearms, and
The
I
biggest-
know from my own experience with my gun that blast, if it was a real live round, it would have been deafening, and I really mean deafening. Okay, so here he is.
Loud, yeah.
He's covering up Ruby. So those are his. He's got something in his hands there. He's putting it over Ruby. Now I want you guys to think about something else here. You've got all these cops. Most of them are very big men. Conveniently, they're covering up the shooter. You're going to disappear him into the building. But the question is, how did they even know to do that? In other words, we never hear anybody says, all right, we're going to just move him into the building. We're just going to wrestle him into the building. Everybody, let's just drag him into the building. Nobody says that. They all just do it as if they all knew from in advance.
It was rehearsed, Ralph.
That they were going to do it.
Yeah. It looks like Lavelle. It looks like Lavelle is directing all the traffic.
If you look at footages of police, arrests where they're wrestling with a guy who's violent and they have to get him under control, they don't try to take him anywhere until they get him caught.
On the ground. Yeah.
Face down on the ground,
Gary,
face
go to the
behind
other photograph.
The idea that they would have tried to wrestle him into the building without cuffing him first is preposterous. It is just absolutely
Yeah, the guy's
ridiculous.
putting the bag over his head right now. That kind of bald-headed guy.
Bald-headed guy, right? And in the movie, when you play, you see what I do is when I go on Google Chrome, and you can actually watch the film at a quarter speed, so it's only happening at 1/4 speed. And when you do that, you can really just see him putting this cover, and I don't know what it is, but he's putting some type of cover over the guy's head, and then they just dance him into the building, and they get
Ralph, I got to congratulate you again. You've done another brilliant job, a real breakthrough. This is sensational stuff. My congratulations. Just stunning.
And it was very much a two-step process, because there was a period, I'm going to say, of at least 6 weeks where the only thing I knew was that Ruby didn't do it. Ruby didn't do it. That guy had to be somebody else.
Yeah, we were talking. We were talking here that you've been doing this for a couple of months now, Ralph.
Yeah, maybe it's been as long as 2 months.
To think that a discovery of this magnitude could be made for a crime that happened in 1963 is just astonishing.
And think about it ironically.
It's astonishing.
I think there's a lot of irony involved, because what we have here is that we have the U.S. government lying to us and saying that Oswald shot Kennedy, when actually agents of the U.S. government are the ones who shot Kennedy. And it turns out the exact same parallel exists for Oswald, that the government is lying to us, that they're saying that this patsy named Ruby shot Oswald, when actually an actual FBI agent. Well, even that isn't exactly true, because like I said, no, I don't believe for a second that Bookhout actually killed Oswald there on the spot. They would have never taken the risk of doing that. There was too much danger that somebody else would get hurt.
Ralph, at this point in time, let's quit while we're ahead.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Next day to have you back, and we'll talk more about the.
Let's do it again. Yes, what I'd really like to do is to do a session and give you all the reasons why I really think that the shooting that we see is a ruse, that it was a fake, it was all theater, that Oswald was killed elsewhere, and I do believe he was killed inside the police station. I think that's the most logical place.
Well, look, I know Chuck Crenshaw, who dealt with Oswald at the hospital. He was assigned to be his, caregiver. He in trauma room number 2. He was alive when he was under the care of Chuck Crenshaw. Ralph, you can take that to the bank.
Well, what did he say about Oswald's condition?
He said he was taking a turn for the better.
He actually got a phone call from LBJ, for God's sake. Took the phone call. Lyndon wanted a deathbed confession. He told him actually he'd taken a turn for the better. He didn't think he was going to die. Lyndon told him there'd be a big guy in a trench coat, and he wanted a deathbed confession. He went back there. There was a big guy in the trench coat, we believe was David Sanchez Morales. But Oswald took a turn for the worse and died, so there was no deathbed confession. But I guarantee you Chuck Crenshaw speaks the truth. He was alive at that point in time.
Isn't he the one who wrote Trauma Room 1?
Huh?
No, it was Trauma 2.
JFK was in Trauma Room 1. Lee was in Trauma Room 2.
I thought he wrote a book. Didn't Crenshaw write a book?
Yes,
He published in Assassination Science right off the bat.
Right.
Hey, listen, Ralph, this is sensational.
All right, we'll do it again, okay? Thanks a lot.
Gary, you want to take
right.
it out?
Good night.
Yeah, once again, we're on the cutting edge of JFK research. This has been JFK Show number 120. Don Fox, Larry Rivera, Ralph Sinkay, Dr. Fetzer. All I can say is stay tuned, because next week it'll be a new discovery. Just keep them coming. All right, see you next week, fellas. Great.